Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, hello friends. Glad to be talking to you again. It's a cool Monday night here in suburban Chicago in early November, and I am walking home from the train. This last weekend was one of my favorite times of the year. My design partner Rob held his annual homegrown con, which he calls the Huber Games, his last name being Huber. And I joined several of our friends to gather at his place for a weekend, I guess Friday evening and then all day Saturday, to play some games. And boy, we had a good time. So I thought I would tell you about the games I played and reflect a little bit on the experience of the Game Con. Now, Rob does a couple things to make the Game Con really run smooth. He sets up multiple gaming spaces so that if we have a big enough group, we can split into 2 or even 3 groups and play a variety of games in the different rooms. He decides on the entrees for the food. Usually he'll do like he did Italian beef on Friday night and pulled pork on Saturday night, and pizza on Saturday at noon. Everybody else is asked to bring beverages and other sides to share to make the rest of the meal go, and some money to help pay for the pizza. It works out great. It's a delicious and nutritious, if not necessarily particularly healthy, set of foods to eat that make for great gaming. The other thing he does is he divides the day up into time slots, and he usually picks 1 or 2 sort of keystone games. In this case, this year it was 3 or 4. It was 4 keystone games to play at different times so that if people are kind of planning when they want to come, they can time it to join us for one particular game or 2 particular games. That works pretty well. In this case, the 4 keystone games are the first games I'll talk about. So Friday night, the plan was to play Game of Thrones. Now, Game of Thrones, of course, is a delightful area control game with some really vicious backstabbing and lots of good theme. The Game of Thrones is really the kind of game that works best when you have a large group. In fact, the aficionados with us who played Game of Thrones advocate that 6 is the best minimum number for the old GOT, which means that we didn't actually have enough people. We had 5 on Friday night, so we didn't quite have enough for an excellent game of Game of Thrones, but we did have enough for an excellent game of Battlestar Galactica. Now, I don't generally like Battlestar Galactica. I don't dislike it, but it's not usually like in my top whatever games. I think it's fun, but not amazing. That said, I did enjoy this play of Battlestar Galactica perhaps more than any other play of it that I've had. I finally understand the rules for the most part, although I did really screw up one rule at least. I just generally enjoyed the experience quite a bit more. I did end up learning at the halfway point of the game that I was a Cylon. Yikes. Part of what makes Battlestar Galactica so good when it's working and firing on all cylinders is that it is balanced on a knife edge. You can have early losses or late losses, but generally you have this sort of smooth movement where the ship and the fleet are slowly degrading, and your goal is to, get to the final destination before you run out of fuel or population or morale. There's like 3 different meters that the humans can run out of. I will say I was a little disappointed. This has happened to me before where I don't quite understand all the rules and then I make a tactical blunder because of that. In this case, I said something that I wanted to do, not realizing I couldn't do it, and kind of gave away that I was a Cylon before I really wanted to. So then I just decided to reveal that I was a Cylon. So that was a bit of a bummer because it would have been nice to sort of play it a bit more smoothly, but that's okay. In the end, the game came down to, as it often does, a single die roll. In this case, it wasn't the last turn of the game, but rather 2 turns before the last turn of the game. One of the characters took a chance and rolled the die. He needed to roll a 5 or more on an 8-sided die, or else they ran out of fuel and lost the game, and he rolled a 5. So that was pretty dramatic. After that, there wasn't a lot we Cylons could do to keep them from winning, and they did, in fact, win. So, Battlestar Galactica was a delightful first play. We also did play a round of quicks which is, as I've said before, one of the top 5 roll and writes. It's excellent, a really nice, tight little game. I was a little jealous. Rob has Qwixx Deluxe, which has whiteboards instead of a pad, which I don't particularly like all that much better. But on the back of the whiteboards is a different array of colors that makes Qwixx a little bit more complex, but a little more interesting too. So at some point, I look forward to trying the more complex version of Qwixx. Boy, I like Qwixx. That is an excellent little game. After Battlestar Galactica, we did play one more game, I think, in the evening before we called it a night. Or we played a couple more games. We had some time. Battlestar Galactica didn't take forever. And so we played a round of 7 Wonders, which was just a treat. Really fun. I thought I had it, but I ended up losing by like 2 points. And then we played a game of Tsuro that was really fun, which again, I thought I had it, but I ended up being second to last player, or the last player to go off the board, which means the other player wins. So nonetheless, they were all fun. It was a great way to start the game con. Then we adjourned. We reconvened at 10 the next morning for a nice full day of gaming. We started with a play test of a game that we've been working on for a while called 12 Dice. It's relatively new and it's okay. We haven't quite got it there yet, or haven't quite got it to the magical part, but that's coming along. Then we played Last Night on Earth, the zombie game. Now this is one I've talked about before a number of times. I'm sure you can find, I'll put a link in the show notes to a previous episode where I've talked about Last Night on Earth. One of the things I like about this game is that you are a zombie fighting maniac, or you are zombies themselves, and it's again a race to the finish. These are very thematic games that are tied to dice rolling, which means that, you know, there's only so much you can do to be successful strategically, and then you just count on the luck of the dice. Sort of the classic Ameritrash model of gameplay, but still really fun and amusing, and something I enjoy quite a bit. That is Last Night on Earth. We played the Get to the Truck expansion, where the characters are trying to get into the truck and leave town. That one was fun because I hadn't played that before. There's also Rob breaking out his brand new 10th anniversary copy of Last Night on Earth, and it came with a little plastic truck, so that's fun to try to escape on the plastic truck rather than a little cardboard token of a truck. The humans, in fact, did escape on a truck. They got really lucky. They drew a card that allowed them to just search the deck for one of the campaign items that they needed. And then about 10 turns later, they drew the other card that let them search the deck for the campaign items they needed. So really just bad luck on our part as the zombies for the finding of the gasoline and the keys, which they needed to escape from the town. So, but that was a nice start to the morning. There were 4 of us playing there, including regular listener Wes, who was there for the entire weekend. Hey Wes. Next up, we played Riverside, which I've talked about on the podcast before. This is a roll and write from Eilif and Svensson is the last name. And these are Norwegian designers or Swedish designers who have made a game about running a excursion thing on some ships, and it's a roll and write. It's a combo-tastic roll and write. It was a good time. Enjoyed that. I did not win that one either. I don't know if I won a game all weekend. I did. I win one game. I won. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. After that, we played the next Keystone game, which is Lords of Waterdeep. Lords of Waterdeep is always a good time. We had fun once again. I did pretty middling. Again, you never quite know how you're doing in that game. I did not do nearly as well as some of my colleagues who just smashed it out of the park. It was awesome. Then we played Las Vegas, and this one was great because one of our friends had Las Vegas Royale, the new set that they came out with, which still has all the rules to play the old Las Vegas game, but then also has these mini games that allow you to change it up a little bit. They add slightly more rules grit to the game, but also slightly more to do. They give you reasons to go to the less valuable spaces, and they have these sort of fun little mini games. I don't know that I actually like Las Vegas Royale better than the core Las Vegas game, which is just a delightful little filler. It takes about 25-30 minutes, whereas Las Vegas Royale took a little longer because of all these complicated mini games. But they were pretty interesting too, so it's kind of a wash for me. I really liked it, glad to have played it. I can't really count it as a new game because it's just an expansion. But it is a new expansion, I guess, one I hadn't played before. And then finally, we wrapped up the evening with 2 games of Valley of the Kings. Now, Valley of the Kings is a game oh no, dropped a phone. Valley of the Kings is a game I've talked about a number of times here on the podcast, or at least once or twice. When I first got it, it is a deck builder, which has an excellent mechanism by which you score points when you bury your cards in your tomb, and you score points for sets of the same kind of card. So if you have a bunch of amulets buried in your tomb, you score the square number of points for the number of amulets you have. So 3 amulets, 9 points, 4 amulets, 16. You get the deal. But all of the cards have powers on them as well that you can use to accelerate your engine or to do lots of cool things. And the thing is that you have this back and forth where you're wanting to use the cool cards you bought to run your engine, but in order to score points, you have to take the cool cards you bought and put them in your tomb. And for every card that's still in your hand at the end of the game, you score nothing. It has to be in the tomb for it to score. Now, the first game around, I followed the basic strategy that I knew one should follow, which is start burying cards right away. And I did pretty well. I got 23 points, which is fine, but nobody else got above 15. So that was a fine win, but I felt bad because, everyone else's first time playing it and I kind of walloped them. But so then we decided to play another round, and then I got destroyed. I think I scored 8 points in the second game. And I think Rob scored 50 points, and other people scored very high numbers as well. It really did highlight the way that a good deck builder is all about building an efficient engine. And Rob found a great combination of cards that just let him whittle his deck down to a remarkably efficient engine and really made the most of what he had available to him. It did remind me, though, that Valley of the Kings is probably a game best played if you're willing to be mean and interested in being mean, because it's definitely a game of screwing with the other players. And if somebody else is doing something that getting them a lot of points, you have to mess with them or they will keep doing it. And that is definitely the place I failed in the second round, to not be messing with the players who are doing well. Also to not be doing well myself. I just really was doing badly. But it is a lovely game and one I would like to play more. I may start putting it in my toggle bag on the regular. Problem is, it is one of those ones where your first play, you're not going to get a lot out of it because you're just learning it. And it's a tough learn. But if I bring it regularly, maybe people will play. We'll see. Anyway, that's Valley of the Kings. It was the premium edition that we were playing. Hoo-yah! Well, that represents the end of the delightful game con that is the Huber Games. 1.5 days of Rock'em Sock'em super fun gaming. I did not bring any of my dramatic Keystone games. In the past I have played Tricarion there. We've played Game of Thrones. I've played Twilight. The one time I played the sort of abortive short game of Twilight Imperium, we played it there. So this is a place where dramatic gameplays have been happening for a while, and that's really fun. It was a little bit more muted this year. It's been a busy year for everybody, and so just getting everything together has been difficult. I'm sure that next year will be fun. One of the things that's really fun about the Huber Games is that Rob always schedules it on the weekend of the time change so that we get an extra hour's sleep Saturday night after staying up late to play games. So that's always a fun little twist. So have you ever gone to a game con, in somebody's house, or a gaming weekend, or held a kind of mini marathon, mini convention type deal? Cabin con, they're sometimes called. If so, head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and share those ideas with me. Wombat929 is my username on Board Game Geek if you wanted to send me a direct message. It's also my username on Board Game Arena, Boîte à Jeux, and Yucata.de if you wanted to play a game with me. What I'd really like to hear is, what are your strategies for holding a fun game day or a fun home game weekend? And what are the sort of event games that you would like to play if you had the opportunity? One of the things that seriously crossed my mind, because I just don't get the chance to play very often, is good old Sidereal Confluence. Now, Sidereal Confluence is, of course, the trading game I've talked about a number of times, and I really like that one. I don't get to play it all that often. Well, that's about it for me tonight. I want to say thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.